Okay, we got the last one. We now know who are the front runners to make it to the college football playoff if they survive conference championship weekend. But what happens to the rest of the teams if they don't? Let's go ahead and talk about it. If you are new here, welcome on into the channel. My name is Cole Thompson. I'm a radio show host based in Houston, and I talk college football daily. So if this is the type of content you enjoy, make sure you smash that subscribe button down below. Leave a comment telling me who you think are the four most deserving teams, who are the four teams that will get into the CFP. Thank you to all of our brand new subscribers who have joined the channel. We are on the race to 1,000. Then 5,000, then 10,000, then 100,000, and we all know we're going to get there, so make sure you tell your friends, your family, your sister, your brother, mortal enemies, best of bros, the drunk guy passed out in a Publix parking lot, and of course your entire church congregation. That way, we can continue to talk about college football. By the way, make sure you give me a follow on social media at Mr. Cole Thompson. It's the exact same as my YouTube channel, so when you hit subscribe on one, just make sure you hit the follow button on the other. Top four are the same. Basically, we knew that these top four were probably going to be in some particular order. And no surprise, Georgia stays at number 1. Michigan moves up 1 spot to number 2. Washington moves up 1 spot to number 3. And Florida State moves up 1 spot to number 4. And the reason why I think that you can't switch Florida State and Washington is because Florida State right now doesn't have its quarterback, but also they struggled at times against a Florida team that also didn't have a starting quarterback. And Washington wasn't perfect. They nearly skated by a loss in the Apple Cup to Washington State, but they are undefeated, and they were number 4 last week. So there wasn't enough clarity and there wasn't enough parity to separate these two. Here's where it gets really interesting. Number 5 is Oregon, and number 6 is Ohio State. Now, for the Ohio State crowd out there is a shot. There is a clear-cut shot that you could see a way to where they get in, but a lot of chaos would have to occur. I mean, literally upsets on upsets on upsets. Like, the entire college football community would have to basically say, let's go ahead and drop an A-bomb on Friday and Saturday, and it's basically just World War II whatsoever. Everyone would have to lose for Ohio State to get in. So I believe that they are one of the 6 best teams in college football. My mind has not changed on that in the slightest, and it won't. It really won't. You can't justifiably tell me that Ohio State, whether or not they didn't beat Michigan, wasn't one of the best teams. They lost by 1 possession, and they still played convincing football against everybody else that they went up against. They played well against Notre Dame. They played well enough against Penn State, and they dismantled everyone else that they went up against. But I don't see a scenario where they get it. So what does this mean for the Texases and the Oregons and the Alabamas of the world? Because this is where things will get really, really, really interesting. The best case scenario for everybody in the college football playoff is if everyone goes undefeated. If Washington does beat that 9-point swing and they do defeat Oregon. If Florida State handles business against Louisville in Charlotte. If Georgia dismantles Alabama. And then, of course, Michigan just does whatever they have to against whatever you want to call that offense that Iowa produces every single year. If that happens, it's a clear-cut shot. Those are the 4 teams that will go to the college football playoff. And you may want to argue resumes, and you may want to argue strength of schedule, and you may want to argue quality of play. They did their job. They handled business throughout the regular season. They did not falter at any point during the 13 weeks. They went on their bye week, hit their reset button, and then came back out and they did their job. That's just the plain and simple case. Is Washington a better team than Oregon? Right now, I don't think so. I don't see a scenario where you look at Washington after last week and go, you know, they played close, but it's a no, because Oregon right now has been consistent. But they did their job, and they beat the one team, and they beat them twice, and that would also be yet another ranked win on the resume. Florida State is not just Jordan Travis. They have an exceptional running back in Trey Benson. They have great wide receivers. They have a good tight end. They have a great locker room. They have a good presence, and they did their job. So they're in. Michigan, you're not going to count out because Michigan looks like the best team in college football, minus Georgia. And Georgia, yeah, they had some hiccups at times against Georgia Tech. But if you're going to hold Oregon, Washington, Texas, Alabama, even Ohio State to that same standard, you have to hold Georgia to the exact same one as well. If that's the way you want to view it, that's fine. But Georgia did its job. So that's the best case scenario. Now, what is the worst case scenario where we actually have to have this conversation? To me, I'm not sure. I think if you were going to be completely honest right now, It would be Georgia losing to Alabama. It would be Michigan winning. It would be Florida State losing to Louisville, Texas losing to Oklahoma State. And then, of course, you have Oregon losing to Washington. Washington losing to Oregon. That's probably the worst case scenario because then we have to have legitimate conversations. Well, is Georgia worthy of being in the college football playoff this year, even though they aren't a conference champion? Because Louisville's a conference champion. Do they belong in the college football playoff? No, they lost 2 games. Well, Oklahoma State lost 3 games this year. Are they worthy of being in the college football playoff? No, because they lost 3 games. Alabama, where do we rank them? Because they did lose by double digits to Texas, but they beat up on the number 1 team. And this is where I think we're really going to have to reset the resume background. That's the key element here. You can make an argument that Alabama doesn't have as strong as a resume as Texas, but they would have a win over the number 1 team in the country. So does that trump Texas? But Texas, of course, if they win, would have the head-to-head over Alabama. So does that mean they're in? And then you have Oregon. Oregon's been the most consistent team in college football, I really think, the entire season, if you include them right alongside Michigan. They've done their job, and even in the game that they lost, they still looked pretty dominant. They still looked pretty impressive. But is it enough to say, well, they win, but Georgia, man, they're better than everybody else. They did their job during the regular season. This is kind of where I sit when it comes to if we are going to college football playoff expansion, this was the year to do it. And I know it's not fair because hindsight's 2020 and everyone understands that you can't control what's going on behind closed doors and nobody knows how the season's going to unfold. But I do have sometimes a problem when we are talking about conference championship weekend because Washington did do its job throughout the regular season and Michigan did its job throughout the regular season and Georgia handled business and Florida State handled business. And now because they lose a game on a Saturday that nobody expected at the start of the year, that's enough of a criteria to keep them out? No, it's stupid. That would be like you rooting for your opponent to win. That way your team also loses alongside them. Like, that's stupid. It's absolutely asinine. And the way that Boo Corrigan just described the actual outcome about what occurred when they decided to go ahead and rank Ohio State to have the other 2 teams was also asinine. It's like you're trying to meet a criteria. You're trying to say these are the functions that you need. But yeah, if we're looking at just the overall style of play, Ohio State looks better than Florida, looks better than Texas. Ohio State looks better than Alabama at times. They should be ranked ahead of them. Like, it makes no sense. It really doesn't. And that's where we kind of reside right now. The best case scenario for the College Football Playoff Committee is for an undefeated season. That's what you want. You want the 4 teams that still sit at 12-0 to improve to 13-0. Because whether or not we agree those are the 4 best teams, those are the teams that have the best records, and those are the teams that are the most deserving. Because if not, here's what we can just do. Go to Vegas, look at the big board, say, okay, these are the betting odds for who should win a national title. Put those 4 teams in. And then we don't have to really worry about the game on Saturday. We just worry about what Vegas wants and what Vegas thinks. And that's not the way football's played. Football is delivered through the game. 3 hours of spit swapping, smash mouthing, beating, bludgeoning, and belittling of your opponent. That's what college football is. And that's what we should expect on Saturdays and on Fridays. And when we see these teams go up against each other, it's crazy. It really is. There's not a big scenario to where you feel comfortable in any shape or form about one team coming out on top and how you want to rank these. Because the easiest scenario would be you get undefeated and we're all secure. But we're probably not going to get that. I guarantee you we're going to see at least one upset this weekend, whether it be Washington falling apart and actually losing by 9+ to Oregon, an Oregon team that maybe features the Heisman Trophy quarterback in Bo Nix. We're going to see Louisville go toe-to-toe with Tate Rodemaker and this Florida State Seminoles team. You could see them drop it. They didn't look their prettiest against a Florida team. You think that Louisville, knowing that they have a shot of guaranteeing bowl eligibility in a New Year's 6, is not going to be swinging at all cylinders? Guys, Louisville right now is not promised a New Year's 6 bowl bid unless they get in somehow. So they have to be able to play well. And then you have all these other teams that are going up at the same time, like Alabama. Alabama right now might honestly be the only team that can contain Georgia. They may look on paper, and I know what you're going to say. Oh, well, Alabama struggled against a team like Auburn. It's Jordan-Hare Stadium. It's Jordan Hare Stadium. That's not the way it goes, man. Jordan Hare is filled with voodoo magic based off of a shaman that decided to plant his roots down in the plains, and somehow they built a stadium over his carcass. That's what is in Jordan Hare Stadium. I don't know what to tell you, but you just take that out of scenario. The bottom line is that right now, chaos is occurring. And this is the chaos that I think we all wanted, because somebody is going to be left out, even though they do deserve it. And it's very clear that the College Football Playoff Committee is not going to leave out undefeateds. And then if you have to get to resumes, guys, it's tough, because you can make an argument right now that Alabama, better resume than Oregon, but Oregon playing more consistent than Alabama. Texas, head-to-head matchup over Alabama. Alabama has a better resume than Texas, but Texas has looked inconsistent more so than Alabama. But again, Oregon right now, they look more consistent than everybody else, weaker schedule. This is where the chaos is occurring. So I'm very excited to see it. I think that this is going to be a fun week in college football. I can't wait for Friday. Friday, we're going to have a better inclination. And let's just get this out of the way real fast. The 4 best teams are not always the ones that get into the CFP. It's the 4 most deserving teams. And this is where we had that conversation last year when Ohio State and TCU snuck their way in. They were more than deserving. They absolutely were more than deserving based off what they did during the regular season. And yeah, did both of them end up losing at some point? Sure. But did they give us a banter along the way that was absolutely phenomenal? Down to the wire against the 2-time defending national champions, going and beating and upsetting Jim Harbaugh in the Fiesta Bowl? Like, we got good games. Yeah, the national championship was a snooze fest for a lot of people, but the way we got to Los Angeles was intriguing and interesting and fun as all hell. It's not always about the 4 best teams. It's about the 4 most deserving teams. So I don't want to hear anything if you're a Florida State fan and you say, oh, well, we lost to Louisville, but you know what? We played more consistent throughout the year than Ohio State, or we played more consistent than No. If you don't win, you're not in. Same thing with Washington. I had Washington in my college football playoff appearance at the start of the year. I doubled down at the midway point, and I said Washington will be in the CFP. I'm going to eat crow if they lose on Saturday because they're not getting in. That's just plain and simple. But if they do win and they do hold their own, and Georgia beats Alabama in Atlanta, they're home away from home, and if Michigan finds a way in the house that Pat McAfee built and the house that Peyton Manning created, that place against Iowa, those are the 4 teams that are in. Couple quick notes real fast. I feel really bad for Ole Miss and for Missouri because of one of these teams is probably not going to play in a New Year's Six Bowl, and it's asinine. Go ahead and tell me why you would put in a lesser team because of they would represent a conference. It's stupid. It's absolutely stupid. If we're really going to go follow the notion of, oh, the best team should be playing in the best games, then Ole Miss and Missouri belong in them. And unfortunately, one of them's getting shot in the foot. They're both 10-2. And the way that I view it is, I honestly would give the nod to Ole Miss over Missouri simply because of one game. LSU. One team lost to LSU. The other team didn't. Boom. We're done. Plain and simple. It's over. Same thing with Oklahoma. I get that Oklahoma lost in Bedlam, but you're not putting in a 9-4 team to represent the Big 12 because Texas makes it to the CFP. No, I give it to Oklahoma because Oklahoma beat the team that's in the college football playoff. That's just the way I view it. So that's just my personal opinion on that. And then Tulane, I'm telling you guys, Tulane's a really interesting team because of I don't know if they'll beat up on SMU. I'm not sure if SMU will be able to hold their own against Tulane. I don't. The Green Wave have been one of the most consistent teams in college football for the last several years underneath Willie Fritz. And it's why Fritz is getting looked at by the University of Houston. Spoiler alert, it's going to be down to him and 2 other guys. And you know the 2 of them, they reside in the Lone Star State and have for quite some time. But if you do end up winning that game, I don't think that there's really an argument when it comes to who belongs. The other thing is that keep a close eye on Liberty, because Liberty, if they win Conference USA and Tulane loses on Saturday, do you give them the nod over SMU? 13-0? I wouldn't. That's my personal opinion. Whatever happens, we got a fun weekend planned ahead. And hopefully, by the end of it all, we do see maybe the 4 best teams, but more importantly, the 4 most deserving teams fighting for a shot to get right down to Houston to hoist up a national title come early January. Thank you so much for watching that video. Don't hit the X button yet. Make sure you hit subscribe to keep up with all of our daily content found on Just Saying It and anything else that we post on this channel. Bye.